The Crown Prince and Prince Jean both admire my younger sister. She is beautiful, intelligent, lively, and well-mannered, making her the most prominent noblewoman in the capital. To avoid a brotherly feud, both stepped back. Their step back was to marry me. I bear a resemblance to her. I was despised by my father and stepmother from childhood, growing up as a stepping stone for my sister and the family. Through ruthlessness and cunning, I became the regent empress dowager, enjoying a life of luxury. Those who once harmed me all died by my hand. Unexpectedly, I was reborn. Heaven is mocking me, forcing me to start over. Well, let them die again. Chapter 1. On the Lantern Festival. Prince Jean lit 3,000 lanterns for my sister Joffiner. Unexpectedly, my sister Joffiner went to meet the Crown Prince instead. The Prince of Jean searched everywhere for her, blaming not my sister but the Crown Prince, even drawing his sword. They were brothers, born of the same mother. Yet they drew swords against each other over a woman. How absurd. The news was kept secret, but eventually reached the Empress's ears. The Empress was enraged and planned to have my sister secretly executed. I, who had been raised in the inner quarters and was still unmarried at 18, was suddenly remembered at this time. I became a scapegoat. To clear my sister's name, both Prince Jean and the Crown Prince asked the Empress to marry me. They didn't even know there was another Zhou in the family before this. It was my parents and my sister who taught them. Though the Empress knew she had been deceived, she didn't want to break ties with her sons. So she summoned me to the palace. Your name is Zhou Qinger? The Empress asked me. The Crown Prince and Prince Jean stood by her side. I bowed respectfully. Yes, Your Majesty. I added, upon first meeting the Empress. This humble maiden has prepared a modest gift, a double-sided embroidery I made myself. It is rather crude, please do not take offense. The Empress paused for a moment. She told me to lift my head. After examining me for a moment, she said, "Where is the double-sided embroidery? Let me take a look." I unfolded the handkerchief from my sleeve and handed it to her with care. My embroidery was exquisite, and the Empress loved double-sided embroidery the most. After she finished looking, her eyes lit up with approval. At such a young age, you can embroider such intricate stitches. You must have put in a lot of effort. You are a patient person. She glanced at her two sons standing beside her. In my previous life, I had also been summoned to the palace in this manner, facing the Empress with panic in my heart. The Empress was dissatisfied, shaking her head repeatedly. When she asked about my embroidery skills, I happened to have a handkerchief with me. After she finished, her expression softened slightly, and she pointed me toward Prince Jean. Prince Jean had a pair of charming, seductive eyes that gazed at people with a hint of affection. We were married for 20 years, and I flattered the Empress and the Emperor on his behalf, helping him replace the Crown Prince. After he ascended the throne, the first thing he wanted to do was kill me. If it weren't for my strategic retreat, using the excuse of embroidering the 6-array diagram for the Empress Dowager, I wouldn't have survived. I was deposed, and my younger sister Joffiner became the new Empress. I used the Empress Dowager's influence to have Joffiner killed, then secretly drained my husband's vitality, and regained my position as Empress. I then survived until my husband's death and my son's ascension to the throne. Those 20 years were filled with blood and danger at every step. Yet heaven has forced me to start over. If I could do it again, I would choose the Crown Prince. In my previous life, I was betrothed to the Prince of Jean, but the Crown Prince never married my sister and barely even interacted with her. The Crown Prince had little affection for Joffiner. I've had enough of being Joffiner's shadow. I will never marry the Prince of Jean again. Even knowing that the Crown Prince would fail and die, I would still choose him. Empress. This humble maiden dares to request permission to embroider a six-erased diagram as a birthday gift for your majesty. Please grant this humble maiden your grace. I immediately knelt down and kowtowed. The empress came from a military family and loved the six-erased diagram most of all. Upon hearing this, her eyes lit up. You are so young, do not make such bold claims. If I cannot complete it in 3 months, I will submit to whatever punishment the empress commands. I bowed again. The empress agreed. She granted me a side chamber in her Qinyang palace and assigned 2 embroiderers to assist me. The piece I was to embroider was a 6-erased diagram screen. The female attendants in Qinyang palace praised me in private. She refuses to marry Prince Jin and also refuses to marry the crown prince. She is truly proud and independent. That's not it. A life of solitude is nothing but being at the mercy of others. I want to climb the royal ladder. Not as the empress's embroiderer, but as her son's wife. I've never been proud. I want power. 3 months in Qinyang Palace flew by quickly. Prince Jin avoided me like a snake, always leaving in a hurry when he came to pay his respects. It was the crown prince who came to the side hall twice to watch me embroider. Does your eye hurt? He asked me. I nodded. Yes. Don't rush it, he said. I thanked him. Another time, when fresh cherries were in season, he sent some to the empress to taste. He also said, "This portion is for Miss Zhou." The empress was slightly surprised. She had already chosen a bride for the crown prince. And it certainly wasn't me. But after 3 months of getting to know me, my words and actions constantly surprised the empress. The crown prince, with his stubborn head, had 1 concubine and 2 beauties in the East Palace. Yet none had conceived. And he looked at me differently. The empress's gaze toward me grew increasingly cautious. She would consider me. 3 months passed. The 6-erased diagram was completed. One side depicted 1,000 horses galloping, majestic and grand. The other side showed the misty waters of Jiangnan, with green-tiled roofs and willow flowers drifting in the breeze. Not only the empress, but the emperor, the crown prince, and Prince Jin were also amazed when they saw the screen. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed that she stitched it thread by thread. The empress said to the emperor. She was moved, with tears in her eyes. What else can you do besides embroidery? The emperor asked me. I can do many things. But I didn't need to tell him. I simply knelt there. Speaking with reverence and clarity, I read a few leisurely books in my spare time, the rest I do not know. My tone was extremely humble. The emperor nodded in satisfaction. Prince Jin was surprised, as if he wanted to say something but held back. The crown prince looked at me with a hint of urgency, staring deeply at me in front of the emperor and empress. Upon returning to the Ministry of Personnel, my father, stepmother, and Zhou Fener were all stunned. You're still alive? Zhou Fener exclaimed in shock. She was usually composed. However, she didn't regard me as a real person and spoke to me directly. They had assumed that I had been killed by the empress. I'm still alive. I've disappointed you, I said. Not only had I returned alive, but within a few days, I was betrothed to the crown prince. When the imperial edict arrived, the entire mansion was in shock. My trusted maid overheard this and Zhou Fener burst into tears. I studied the crown prince's preferences diligently. If it weren't for Prince Jin meddling, I almost succeeded. I never thought I'd end up making her wedding dress instead. My stepmother comforted her. It doesn't matter. She can't become the crown prince's wife. Let her make a fool of herself. The royal family will replace her with you. My senior maid returned and told me, do they think the emperor's arranged marriage is a joke? Can they really change the bride? I just smiled. My younger sister didn't love the crown prince or Prince Jin either. She only wanted power and influence. In my previous life, she put on a show and pushed me forward to take the blame. Unbeknownst to her, I was betrothed to Prince Jin, And she was also filled with pain, repeatedly trying to harm me. Let her die sooner. I'm tired of her antics. I said to my confidant. My loyal maid, Hai Tang, had been loyal to me all her life and had some martial arts skills. Her skills were something I had paid 100 taels of silver to send her to learn from the younger brother of the head steward of our household. No one else knew about this. What should we do? Hai Tang asked me. Don't worry. They'll come looking for trouble soon. We'll use their own plan against them, I said. A few days later, my stepmother hosted a banquet. My father was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, a close advisor to the Crown Prince. And our family, as a distinguished clan with a history of military achievements, was owed some respect. Moreover, I had recently been betrothed to the Crown Prince, so our family's status had risen significantly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, my stepmother and Zhou planned to harm me. And I, too, wanted them to reap what they had sown. We each had our own agendas and prepared for the banquet. The day before the banquet, my father called the entire family together for dinner. Our family was not very large. My mother gave birth to my older brother and me. When I was 6 months old, she passed away due to illness. My stepmother entered the household a year later and gave birth to Zhou the following year. The childbirth was difficult, and my stepmother could no longer conceive. My father took 2 concubines. Both concubines had children, but neither was able to give birth successfully. My father's heart grew cold, and the 2 concubines were tormented until they were broken. My stepmother favored my older brother and marginalized me. My older brother was very close to my stepmother and Zhou and never cared about my well-being. When I was young, I had a quarrel with Zhou and my father beat me with a stick. My older brother bullied me, pushing me to the ground when I was 7 and stomping on my face with his boots, simply because I accidentally dirted Zhou favorite embroidered shoes. My life was extremely difficult. My biological mother left behind an old servant who was cunning and worldly wise, able to eke out a living under my stepmother's rule. At the same time, she was loyal and kept part of my birth mother's private property, which she handed over to me in its entirety. She also suggested that I enroll in the clan school to study. The Zhou clan school was open to both boys and girls, and all clan members could attend. However, the workload was heavy, and the teacher was strict, so the girls in the clan could not endure the hardship. I attended classes every day, rain or shine, even when I was sick and confused. I made sure my homework was neat. The teacher favored me and gave me extra assignments. My clan brothers said he was targeting me, but only I knew he liked me the most. I spent my days studying, embroidering, and playing chess with myself in my free time. I was so busy that I rarely went near my father and stepmother, and they almost forgot I existed. In my previous life, I married the Prince of Jin. Once, while he was discussing important matters with his advisors, I entered to serve tea and overheard their conversation. I casually offered a suggestion. The Prince of Jin did not heed my advice, and later the plan failed, causing him severe losses. He and his advisors analyzed the situation repeatedly and eventually agreed that my suggestion had been the best. From then on, whenever he had important matters to discuss, he would consult me as well. This was the fruit of my diligent studies. Tomorrow's banquet, you must all keep a low profile. Do not let the fact that Qinger was granted marriage to the crown prince go to your heads and make you arrogant, lest you incur others' hatred. My father's words snapped me out of my thoughts. I came to my senses. It must be my stepmother and Zhou. My elder brother said, Qinger is too ordinary. How can she bear such a great responsibility? Her becoming the crown princess may not be a blessing for the Zhou clan. He added, we should request the emperor to grant Zhou the title of crown princess. My father agreed. He looked at me. In terms of beauty, I was more attractive than Joe. However, my attire was plain, and my expression was stiff, making me seem like a lifeless porcelain vase, unlikely to win the favor of men. Sigh. I wonder how the emperor and empress could have chosen you. He sighed. Jealousy flashed in Joe's eyes. Nearly impossible to hide. My stepmother clenched her fingers tightly. I looked at them expressionlessly and suddenly spoke. I am now 18 years old. What? Father. Mother. If you had arranged my marriage earlier, this opportunity would not have come to me. It is you who have given me wealth and honor. Thank you, I said. After speaking, I stood up and left. They were left standing there, furious. Later, my stepmother and younger sister Joe came to my courtyard to apologize. My stepmother presented a jewelry box. This purple jade hairpin is very suited to Chinger's temperament. Joe's maid brought 3 sets of light purple spring robes. This is the finest moonlight silk. I made them first for you. Sister. Please don't refuse them. I accepted everything. However, I made a small alteration to the sleeves of the garments Joe had given me. The next day, the banquet at the Ministry of Rites was bustling with activity. The theater troops' drums and gongs echoed through the air, and banners fluttered in the breeze. The entrance was filled with fragrant carriages and fine horses, and the crowd was composed of nobles and aristocrats. The Crown Prince and Prince Jean have arrived. A maid informed me. I put on the clothes Joe had given me and wore the purple jade hairpin my stepmother had given me. They wanted to see me, and I had gifts to give them in return. The Crown Prince and Prince Jean were seated at the front, listening to the play, while the women were in the back courtyard. When I appeared, the noble women didn't recognize me, but I recognized them. Not only did I recognize them, but I also knew the fate that awaited each of them. Miss Joe is truly beautiful, a young woman said, trying to strike up a conversation with me. I thanked her. Just then, the noble women noticed someone approaching. Their expressions changed, and they all seemed to compose themselves, wanting to gather around. I turned around and saw a man in a brocaded robe. He had come directly to the rear courtyard, where the female guests were resting. Who is this ugly monster? He seemed to be looking for someone, scanning the crowd. When he saw me, his expression turned angry. The young woman who had just complimented me tried to protect me. How ugly! Ugly enough to make one sick. The man in the brocaded robe continued. Who gave you permission to dress like that? You're not worthy. The man in the brocaded robe was handsome and wealthy, but he had a bad temper. Your Highness. She is the Crown Prince's betrothed. The stranger who was protecting me whispered this. The man in the brocaded robe was the Crown Prince of Qin, the Emperor's nephew. He was handsome, his status second only to the prince's, and his family was extremely wealthy. However, his personality was eccentric. His mother was even more brutal and ruthless. He once had a favorite concubine who loved light purple dresses, but she was beaten to death by his mother. When he saw a woman wearing the same color, he immediately pulled out his whip and struck her. Many noble women avoided him and stopped wearing light purple dresses altogether. The Crown Prince's fiancée is also ugly, he said angrily. And she dares to wear a purple jade hairpin? You're not worthy. Saying this, he stepped forward to tear off my hairpin and push me to the ground. He came charging toward me with great ferocity. From a distance, I saw the Crown Prince, Prince Jean, and my older brother, along with several other men, entering the inner courtyard. They noticed the commotion and all looked over. The Crown Prince wanted to come to me, but was stopped by Prince Jean, who seemed to say something. The Crown Prince's heir approached me, and I fell to the ground, my hand hitting a stone. The jade bracelet on my wrist shattered instantly. I picked it up. The Crown Prince and the others arrived. What's the commotion? The crown prince asked the crown prince of Qin. The crown prince of Qin was unafraid of him. He was all show and no substance. Spoiled by his parents. And the emperor favored this nephew. Plus, he was a year older than the crown prince. Always acting superior as the elder cousin. This ugly woman is a disgrace. The crown prince of Qin said to me. Crown prince. You should ask the emperor to select another princess for you. The crown prince ignored the stares of the crowd and stepped forward to help me up. His eyes, in the sunlight, were a light brown, hiding a distant and indifferent gaze. Yet there was a faint trace of concern. I held the broken jade bracelet. It's broken. Your Highness. The crown prince's expression tightened. In the presence of all the young ladies, young masters, and the prince, the crown prince of Qin pushed me. Breaking my jade bracelet. I said. The crown prince of Qin looked annoyed. So it's broken? I'll give you 10 or 8 to replace it. He admitted it. Good. This was given to me by the Empress Dowager as a token of our engagement. Left by the Empress Dowager herself. I said. The scene fell suddenly silent. Everyone held their breath. Destroying such a precious item was no small matter. Even the Prince of Qin himself would be punished. Let alone the Crown Prince of Qin. This matter could go either way. If it was minor, the Crown Prince would be beaten. If it was serious, the Qin mansion would lose its title. Your Highness, if you are willing to kneel and kowtow to me in public, I will take full responsibility for this matter. I said. The Crown Prince looked at me deeply. The courtyard fell silent. My stepmother and younger sister Zhou had come to watch the spectacle. The two of them had plotted to have the Crown Prince of Qin humiliate me. Little did they expect that now the Crown Prince of Qin was in a difficult position. The jade bracelet the Empress had given me was accidentally broken by me. That was my fault. But it did not deserve death. However, if someone else had broken it, it would be a grave offense against the Empress. The crime of grave offense left plenty of room for interpretation. The princess consort of Qin also arrived at this moment. She inquired about the situation. The spring robe was given to me by my younger sister, and the purple jade hairpin was given to me by my mother. I rarely go out, so I didn't know that this was the crown prince's taboo. I said to the princess of Qin, the jade bracelet is destroyed, and the crown prince admitted it himself. If he refuses to kneel, he should go apologize to the Empress. The princess of Qin glared at me angrily. Then she pointed at her son. You ungrateful son. Kneel down and apologize to the crown prince's fiancé. The arrogant and tyrannical crown prince of Qin dared to disregard the crown prince and Prince Jean. But he dared not insult the Empress. He knelt down. He kowtowed to me 3 times. Everyone looked at me with even more complicated expressions. Although they believed that I would face great danger and that the Qin prince's mansion would eventually seek revenge on me, they also began to respect me. I, a sudden-to-appear crown prince's betrothed, was the subject of everyone's mockery and had even violated the taboo of offending the crown prince. Unexpectedly, I turned the tables so skillfully. The princess of Qin left first with her son. My stepmother and Zhou turned pale. Especially Zhou, who deliberately asked me in front of everyone, Sister, why did you frame me? She doesn't admit it now. She doesn't want to be labeled as malicious. She and her stepmother wanted to use my forced marriage to host a grand banquet, then have the crown prince deliberately humiliate me in front of everyone. In this way, Zhou could step on me and shine brightly. Perhaps the emperor and empress would change their minds, and the crown prince's fiancé would be replaced. But she never expected that the crown prince of Qin would kneel before me, and her scheme would be exposed in front of everyone. Everyone looked at her with disdain. The Prince of Qin was the only one who protected her, standing beside her and saying, Miss Zhou, this is a private matter between sisters. You shouldn't slander her in public. Isn't this spring robe a gift from my younger sister? There's even Afen embroidered on it. I pulled out my sleeve. Fu often embroidered Afen character in floral patterns on her handkerchiefs or the sleeves of her clothes. I had copied it overnight. Everyone saw it. And their disdainful glances grew even more intense. Prince Jean felt awkward. Miss Jo never shows her face. Yet she's so cunning. No wonder the Empress took a liking to her after only 3 months in the palace. Miss Jo's methods are beneath her. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That purple jade hairpin was a gift from Mrs. Jo to the eldest miss. The eldest miss was raised in seclusion. How could she know about Prince Jean's taboos? Mrs. Jo must have known. Whoever marries the second Miss Jo will bring misfortune upon their family. These words would soon reach the Emperor and the Empress. Fu would find it difficult to become the Jin Wang's wife now. She looked at the Jin Wang with tear-filled eyes. The Jin Wang's emotions were unpredictable. And for a moment, he didn't know how to respond. He was also a bit disappointed. I watched the scene in silence. When I looked away, the Crown Prince was staring at me. He rarely smiled. His expression solemn, but his gaze was so intense, as if he wanted to etch me deeply into his heart. I had never been subjected to such a fiery yet composed gaze in my 2 lifetimes. My heart burned, and I felt uneasy, not knowing what to do. The jade bracelet is broken. I'll go apologize to my mother. He reached out his hand. Give it to me. It has nothing to do with you. Who said the jade bracelet is broken? I laughed. The Crown Prince looked at the broken jade in my hand and was slightly surprised. Is this fake? It's fake, I said. He paused for a moment before smiling faintly. Like a gentle breeze blowing across a lake in early spring. It was tender and warm, carrying the first hint of spring into my heart. The lavish banquet ended abruptly. Many distinguished guests left early. As the hostess, I also returned to my room early and did not stay for dinner. The Crown Prince avoided the crowd and came to my courtyard to sit for a while. It was improper according to etiquette. But this place had been carefully cultivated by me over the past 10 years, it belonged to me. And outsiders could not discern its secrets. I invited the Crown Prince to have tea. He noticed the white jade chessboard on my table, where the pieces were arranged in a complex and intractable position. A true stalemate. He couldn't help but praise it. He said, "Who could play so skillfully?" I couldn't bring myself to say it was just me playing alone. So I casually messed up the pieces and asked him, "Your Highness, are you skilled at chess?" "I know a little," he replied. "Shall we play a game?" I suggested. He agreed. He took the white pieces. We played chess and chatted. "Aren't you afraid of offending the Prince of Qin's mansion?" he asked. The Prince of Qin's mansion was so powerful that even he feared them. If the Prince of Qin's mansion dares to harm me, their days are numbered. The Emperor would be terrified to see such a powerful younger brother. I said. So I wasn't afraid. Moreover, in my previous life, the Prince of Qin's mansion had suffered a great tragedy, with over 300 members of the household executed. The Emperor has long harbored a grudge. If I recall correctly, the charge against the Prince of Qin in my previous life was murdering the Crown Prince. Thinking of this, I raised my eyes to look at him. The Crown Prince also looked at me. His eyes were deep, as if they could hold the entire lake, without a single ripple. I lowered my eyes and avoided his gaze. The Prince of Qin must be eliminated. If the Emperor does not eliminate him, the new ruler will not be able to sit securely on the throne. And this will be a disaster for future generations. The Crown Prince said, "What you say is entirely correct." He called me by my name. I felt even more uneasy. "Your Highness, do you feel any regret about marrying me?" I asked him. Actually, this question could have gone unasked for a lifetime. After all, in his previous life, he had never married Fu, not even as a concubine. let alone a legitimate wife. No, he answered, very decisively. He continued, I once saw an embroidery depicting 100 birds paying homage to a phoenix. The birds and the phoenix seemed to be flying before my eyes. So lifelike. I was deeply moved. When I inquired about it, others told me it was embroidered by the second young miss of the Zhou family. She exchanged this embroidery for a prescription to save Prince Jean. I suddenly fell silent. The crown prince looked at me. When I saw you embroidering the 6 erased diagram in Qingyang Palace, I understood everything. Therefore, on the Lantern Festival, the person I truly wanted to invite to admire the lanterns was you. I lowered my gaze. His fingers were long and slender, with distinct knuckles. A white ghost stone fell between his fingers, striking and unsettling. He asked me, and you? Do you regret marrying me? You and Prince Jean. Prince Jean doesn't know me. I said. I have never met Prince Jean. The crown prince placed another piece. I had never told Prince Jean that the girl he had met on the street was me. I stole a skinny horse, intending to run away from home. But the horse was uncontrollable. It galloped wildly through the streets, and I nearly fell off its back. A young man in fine attire rode his horse toward us. With skill and courage, he jumped from his horse onto mine, wrapped his arms around me, and grabbed the reins. The reins cut into his hands, drawing blood. In the end, both of us fell off the horse together, with him cushioning my fall, and we both landed heavily. He was taken back to the palace. When he left the palace, his hands were covered in scabs. When he inquired about my identity, I had already been locked up. He met Zhou Fener, but I knew that the young man who had saved me was him. 5 years ago, he was seriously ill, and the emperor and empress had summoned all the renowned doctors. There was a mysterious doctor with an eccentric personality who refused to help even when the emperor requested him. I went to his door and asked what he wanted. He asked me, "What can you give me?" I was very naive at the time. That naivety unexpectedly earned his trust. I said I could embroider. To my surprise, the eccentric doctor actually accepted. He asked me to embroider 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix for him. And he went to the palace to treat Prince Jean. Prince Jean survived. When Zhou Jian'er's 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix was unveiled at the Wanjin Pavilion, it shocked the world, and Zhou Fener's fame soared once again. She was destined to become Prince Jin's wife. If it weren't for the crown prince's interference during the Lantern Festival, she would have been engaged to the Prince of Jin this year. I had another idea and told the crown prince about these events. There is no romantic feeling between us. He saved me once, and I saved him once. We are even. I said. Now, I must take a different path to power. Rather than getting entangled with the Prince of Jin, my stepmother wants to use my forced marriage to host a banquet, humiliate me, and make my sister shine, thereby propelling her into a high position. Even if she can't replace me, my sister will once again shine brightly. Just like before. A person who has grown accustomed to feeding off others' blood and flesh will never bother to cultivate their own abilities. Take my sister Zhou Fener, for example. Whether it's studying or embroidery, both are arduous and exhausting, requiring immense endurance. The only thing Zhou Fener has ever put effort into is maintaining her figure and beauty. After the Jin Wang ascended the throne, I saw her again, and she looked as though she were 10 years younger than me. Still as beautiful and graceful as ever, with countless alluring postures. You've offended the crown prince of Qin. You deserve to die. My father scolded me. He thought I would kneel and beg for mercy. But to his surprise, I stood straight and said, if Mother and Fener hadn't schemed against me, how could I have offended the crown prince of Qin? My father was speechless. He looked at my stepmother and Zhou Fener. Zhou Fener was his beloved daughter. the pearl of his eye. At that moment, Zhou Fener was tearful, saying only, "It was all my fault, father." She took the blame upon herself, and my father felt even more pity for her. Scolding my stepmother instead, "Fener is so young, how dare she do such a wicked thing? You must have instigated her." The stepmother also knelt down. My elder brother prepared to plead for mercy, saying to me, "Qing'er is unreasonable. If she apologizes to the crown prince of Qin, then I would bring shame upon the imperial family. I am the betrothed of the crown prince. If I apologize, where would the crown prince have a place to stand? In the end, it would be our father who would be punished." I said, "Not only will the emperor blame him, but will the court officials still respect our father?" My father looked at me. He hadn't expected me to have such awareness, which surprised him. He punished the stepmother. The punishment was for her to go to the Prince of Qin's mansion herself and apologize to the Prince of Qin's wife. Zhou Fener refused, clinging to her mother and crying, "The Prince of Qin's wife is heartless and cruel. She'll kill me." I said from the side, "Don't go secretly. Mother can kneel at the gate of the Prince of Qin's mansion and let the passers-by see. Say that you failed to raise your child properly and are apologizing to the Prince of Qin. As a compassionate mother, you are putting the Prince of Qin's mansion in a difficult position, which will make the emperor pity the Zhou family even more." My father nodded. "That's exactly what we should say. But if we do this, my stepmother's reputation will be ruined, and she'll never be able to go out in society again. The other noblewomen won't want to associate with her. Her daughter, Zhou Fener, will likely struggle to find a good marriage." My father wasn't unaware of this, but sacrificing his wife and daughter's future to save his own face and settle the feud with the Prince of Qin's mansion was more important to him. My father's greed is no less than any man's. The stepmother had no choice but to kneel. She knelt for an hour, with many onlookers gathering around. The Princess of Qin summoned her inside. She thought she would be spoken to, but instead she was told to continue kneeling. The stepmother knelt in the Qin Wangfu for 8 hours and was then doused with cold water by a maid of the Qin Wangfu. She knelt in the courtyard all night before the Qin Wangfei finally calmed down. However, after such ordeal, the stepmother fell ill upon returning home. She was on the brink of death, barely able to speak. My father called a doctor to keep her alive with ginseng, because if she died, my sister Zhou Fener and I would have to mourn for 3 years. We had already reached marriageable age and couldn't afford to wait that long. The stepmother was moved to a rural estate to convalesce. She was effectively ruined. Zhou Fener cried like a child. Without her mother's support, she relied heavily on my older brother, asking him for help with everything. Their bond grew even stronger. My sister-in-law was unhappy about this but dared not say anything, enduring it in silence. "Qing'er, could you please talk to your older brother? He's too close to Fener, and I'm a bit worried," my sister-in-law said. "Why don't you say it yourself?" I asked. My eldest sister-in-law was at a loss for words. "Nothing has happened. If you go and say it, you won't be in the right." "Does that mean I would be in the right if I go and say it?" I said. My eldest sister-in-law knew she couldn't use me and didn't dare to come again. Zhou Fener asked her older brother to go find Prince Jin. Prince Jin came to the Zhou mansion to comfort her, to marry her. Prince Jin once again requested the Empress to grant the marriage. "You can marry anyone, but not her," the Empress said. "She saved my son's life," the Prince of Jin said. The Empress probably knew the reason, so she softened her tone. "Go tell her to come to Qinyang Palace and embroider 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix for me. I will ask the Emperor to grant you the marriage." Prince Jin was overjoyed and went to tell Zhou Fener. Zhou Fener's expression changed instantly. Zhou Fener refused to go to the palace to embroider the 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix painting. She said, "Back then, I injured my hand while rushing to finish that embroidery. Now my wrist is stiff. And I can't embroider anymore. Prince Jean looked at her in astonishment. He did not give up, but said, I know a court physician who is skilled in bone examination. Let him take a look at you. Shall we? Joe grew even more flustered. No need. You eat and drink normally. A needle is no heavier than a chopstick. Since you cannot hold a needle, there must be some injury. It is best to seek medical attention sooner rather than later. Prince Jean continued. Joe was even more resolute. I don't want to see a doctor. I don't want anyone to know I've become useless. Prince Jean turned and left. 2 more months passed. And it was the anniversary of my birth mother's death. I took my maid to visit her grave. On the way back, Prince Jean blocked my path on the official road. He asked me, was that 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix painting you embroidered? I was surprised. Your Highness only realized this now? The Crown Prince understood it back then. Prince Jean clenched his fingers tightly. Why didn't you tell me? I couldn't see you. My family was planning to replace me. So they treated me like a thief. I said. Prince Jin's cheeks trembled slightly. He seemed to want to take my hand. Come with me to see the Emperor and Empress. Since there's a misunderstanding, let's clarify everything. There was no misunderstanding. The prince's love for me grew thin once he realized I was useful as a princess. He never showed me any special favor. He just couldn't have me. So he couldn't stop thinking about me. When he ascended the throne, my father still held power in the court and loved Joe more. Joe remained beautiful and deeply loved by her father. Replacing the empress with someone else wouldn't affect the bigger picture. So the Prince of Jean deposed me and made her empress. If my father were to retire, Joe would be old and unattractive. What would she have left? Therefore, this little bit of affection is insignificant. In the face of interests, it's powerless. Why would it shake my path to survival? If I thought that a fleeting emotion born from a man's empty promises could grant me power, I wouldn't have survived this long. I stepped away from him. Prince, I am already the Crown Prince's betrothed. If you dare to disrespect me again, I will break your hand. I climbed into the carriage. Haitang drove the carriage away quickly. I heard that the Prince of Jean went to the imperial study the next day and accused my father in front of the emperor. He said the Zhou family had substituted a lesser quality item. He said the Zhou family had deliberately deceived him by using Zhou in my place. The emperor heard this and was slightly startled. My father knew that resisting was futile. So he knelt down and kowtowed. Your Majesty, I was unaware of this. I only found out today. It was all my wife's reckless behavior. I failed in my duty as a father and am willing to accept punishment. The emperor could not punish him. However, this incident completely ruined Zhou reputation. My father no longer treated her as he once did. Only my elder brother still loved her dearly and remained by her side. The two of them encountered the Crown Prince of Qin on the street. The Crown Prince of Qin recalled the previous scandal and demanded to punish them publicly. Zhou pushed my elder brother forward. The Crown Prince of Qin ordered his men to bind my elder brother's arms behind his back and said to Zhou, if you slap him 10 times, I will forgive you. Zhou actually did as he was told. The Crown Prince of Qin laughed heartily, amused by the spectacle. My elder brother was utterly humiliated. When he returned home, he told my sister-in-law, I shouldn't have been so kind to her. She's a thankless wretch. My sister-in-law heard this and relayed it to me before returning to her parents' home. No matter how much my older brother pleaded with her, she refused to come back. My older brother tried to reconcile with me, but I wouldn't let him into the house. Zhou grew increasingly disgraceful, and my father refused to acknowledge her as his daughter in public. You're the one who's good. You're the one who's made something of yourself, my father said to me. I smiled. Fenner is in this situation because of your indulgence and pampering. Father. You. My older brother. and my mother are all innocent. My father's face turned pale, and he wanted to punish me. Unfortunately, I was the crown prince's betrothed, so he dared not. He was so angry that his face turned green, and he stormed out. I hated Funner, and I also hated my father and brother for trying to distance themselves from everything. Funner, however, believed it was all my fault. With her narrow-mindedness, even if I hadn't killed her in my previous life, she wouldn't have lasted long as Empress, of course. She was easily killed by me because she had nothing but her beauty. In this life, she wanted to kill me. She thinks that once I'm dead, my father and brothers will love her again, and my stepmother will return. She'll regain Prince Jin's affection and still have a glorious life. As long as I'm dead. So she set a trap. Her trap is laughable. But it doesn't matter. I'm too lazy to watch her squirm. I'll play along and send her to her death sooner. Funner invited me to drink. She came to my courtyard with a sincere tone. Sister, it's all my fault. But I didn't want to do it. My mother forced me. She added, I'm apologizing to you. We're still sisters. From now on, I'll do whatever you say. Okay? Okay. Great. I've prepared a feast in the Qingyun pavilion in the back garden. Let's have a drink together. She said. I agreed. She probably never read a book. Her scheme was so poorly thought out that I couldn't bear to watch. After she left, I instructed Haitang, find that gold-red feathered silk cloak. Haitang told the maid in charge of clothes to find the cloak. I wore it that day and went to my father's study to ask him for a book. At the same time, I told him, Funner wants to invite me for a drink and apologize to me. Nonsense. My father said. Don't pay any attention to her. I still want to make peace with her. After all, we're sisters. I said. My father said nothing more. Still wearing the golden red feathered brocade cloak, I went to see my older brother. My eldest brother was in poor spirits, deeply shaken, and had been secluded in his room studying. I merely said, I was passing by and wanted to check on my elder brother. I still wore the cloak when I went to the back garden. By mid-afternoon, I began to shut myself in my room. Funner invited me, and I did not go out until nightfall. When I finally went to the Qingyun pavilion in the back garden for the banquet. The Qingyun pavilion was where my father used to study, and later it became a place where my elder brother entertained his friends. It had 2 stories. Funner invited me to drink, and she poisoned the wine. The poison she obtained had an antidote. She made me drink it first, then framed me for poisoning her with the intention of killing her. She pretended to be ill for a while, then took the antidote, which only caused minor bodily harm but did not threaten her life. While allowing her to eliminate me, I had already known this. Even the herbalist who sold her the poison was just a charlatan. Poison is poison, there is no antidote. She was so foolish to spend 100 taels of silver on it. But it doesn't matter, this is all evidence against her. I wore a golden and red feathered cloak and entered Qingyun Lu. Soon after, Qingyun Lu caught fire, and I jumped out of the second-floor window. Funner was burned to death inside. I was extremely lucky. There was a tree below the second-floor window, and I only suffered minor scrapes, with no serious injuries. The Empress was deeply concerned and summoned me to inquire. I cried as I told her. Funner tried to kill me. She made me drink poisoned wine, and when I refused, she set the place on fire to burn me to death. The fire spread too quickly, and in my panic, I jumped out the window. She tried to open the door but was struck by falling debris. I watched helplessly as the flames consumed her, unable to save her. The Empress comforted me. It's not your fault. Everyone said Funner had gone mad to act so wildly. They also praised me for being bold and daring to jump out the window to escape. thus saving my life. My father and older brother were deeply saddened by the news. My stepmother, upon hearing the news, fell even more ill, her mind confused. The crown prince came to the Zhou mansion to visit me. I told him, "If your highness wishes to call off the engagement, you may speak to the emperor. I now have a life in my hands." I did not hide anything from him. Hiding the truth is the worst course of action, it would only lose his trust in me. I need him. The crown prince disregarded etiquette and took my hand. To kill to save a life is permissible, to fight to stop war is also permissible. Qing'er. I am not a fool. He knew it wasn't my fault. My counterattack was merely to avoid further conflict with Zhou. I gripped his hand in return, "Your Highness. Meeting you is the greatest fortune of my life." That night, the one who killed Zhou was my maidservant, Haitang. Haitang had studied martial arts and was skilled at killing. I had been wandering around all day in a golden and red feathered cloak. At dusk, Haitang put it on and went to the rendezvous. The cloak was brightly colored, even at night, making it impossible to overlook. Everyone in the Zhou family saw me go to the rendezvous. Zhou wanted to kill me, but there was no one to serve me inside Qingyunlu. Only 2 old maids at the door. The lights were dim, and Haitang pulled down the hood of the cloak. So only Zhou knew she wasn't me. Zhou started a commotion but was quickly subdued by Haitang. She was no match for Haitang. Haitang killed her, set the place on fire, and then jumped out the window with ease. I hid behind a tree, using silver threads to scrape my face and elbows, and retrieved my golden red feathered cloak. We managed to deceive everyone and easily dealt with Zhou. The matter of Zhou purchasing poison was also revealed by me, and everyone marveled at my good fortune for escaping death. That poisonous woman Zhou deserved to die. In the winter month, I married the crown prince. The crown prince was scholarly and refined, with a deep and reserved personality. He was the younger brother of Prince Jean, and both outsiders and I could see that the emperor and empress favored Prince Jean more. Prince Jean was dashing and charming, with a bold and generous personality. Who wouldn't love such a son? The crown prince was fortunate to be the eldest son. Unfortunately, Prince Jean had him killed, allowing Prince Jean to reap the benefits. I married him, but I did not want to become a widow too soon. At least I wanted to wait until he ascended the throne. He treated me well. When I first arrived, he gave me the keys to his private treasury. When he tasted something delicious in the inner court, he would bring it back for me. Whenever there were new tributes, the empress would receive them first, but he would always ensure I got a share. This was enough for me. I had gained respect, which was what I desired most. However, I was not obsessed with his love. The Eastern Palace has a concubine and 2 beauties, and there will be more in the future, of course. I do not reject his love, as his affection only makes my path smoother. My heart is barren, and I only want to clear all obstacles and climb to the high position I desire, continuing to live my good life. If I have to start over, so be it. I am not afraid. I have already dealt with my inner demon, my younger sister, Zhou. My life will be much freer now, no longer having to be treated as Zhou substitute by Prince Jean. I have gained much, but I hope I can laugh last. Soon, I became pregnant. The crown prince was overjoyed, holding me tightly at night and imagining all the wonderful things our child would do. He said, "Qing'er, we only want a son. Is that all right?" Why? When my father was the crown prince, we lived in constant fear of the struggles between the princes. At that time, my parents hated the Prince of Qin because he was more favored. After my father ascended the throne, he and my mother seemed to have forgotten the hardships we endured back then and continued to favor my younger brother. If they truly loved him, why didn't they dare to depose the eldest son and install the younger one? People never learn from their mistakes unless they lose everything. They will always let their descendants repeat their tragedies generation after generation. He said. I held him gently, stroking his hair. Why could he tolerate me killing Jofiner? Because he understood my suffering. My barren heart suddenly bloomed a tiny, tiny flower. I will listen to you, I replied with my lips. But in my heart, I thought. The crown prince had said it himself, people never learn from their mistakes. Parents always believe their sons are different from their brothers. That they won't grow arrogant from favor. Now, the crown prince must endure the pain of his parents' favoritism toward Prince Jean. When he becomes emperor, he may still yearn for more sons. But it doesn't matter. I have an heir. I do not dwell on what I have or do not have, I only use the pieces in my hand wisely. The pieces I currently hold are the prince's love for me, the empress's affection for me, and the Jean Wang's sense of guilt toward me. When I gave birth to my eldest son, I immediately offered sacrifices to the Qin Wang. I knew of the Qin Wang's numerous crimes from my previous life and guided the prince to gather evidence, conveniently implicating my father in the process. The Prince of Qin had been arrogant and tyrannical over the years. His entire family had committed countless crimes, and the emperor had always harbored a grudge against him. Old grudges and new offenses combined, and the entire household of over 300 people was executed. My father was stripped of his official position. At first, he wasn't panicked. After all, he was the crown prince's father-in-law, he would eventually be reinstated. But he gradually realized that his disciples were being pushed out one by one. He belatedly realized that I was cutting off his roots. He came to find me. At that time, my son was 2 years old, and I was teaching him to speak. Have you considered what will happen to you and the young prince if your family is destroyed? He asked me. In my previous life, as the wife of the Prince of Jean, my family never helped me in the slightest, and even held me back. I climbed my way up on my own. In this life, I started off more smoothly and was more cautious. Why would I need him? We rely on the crown prince, I said. My father wanted to scold me for being foolish, but he dared not. We must leave a way out for the family. If your father and I meet misfortune, you will gain nothing. How could there be no benefit? I smiled. I will be happy. My father stared at me in shock. He had been waiting to see me fail. Instead, he was the one who failed first. After losing his position, he constantly sought to regain it, but had no one to turn to. Overwhelmed by worry, he fell ill and died soon after. On his deathbed, he said, I can endure this. My daughter is going to be empress. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see that day. My brother went around telling everyone. My sister is the crown prince's consort. But everyone knew that the crown prince's wife had been bullied by her older brother since childhood and wasn't close to him. His wife divorced him. He kept the property, mingled with concubines, and soon became addicted to gambling. He lost everything and still told others. My sister is the crown prince's wife, you can borrow money from me with confidence. The crown prince sent men to kill him in a dark alley at night to prevent him from tarnishing my reputation. When they needed me, I was the daughter of the Zhou family, the sister of the Zhou family. When they didn't need me, they trampled my face with their shoes and abandoned me without a second thought. I don't need such a family. I am like a bird without wings, born without a place to land. I secretly eliminated the 2 most trusted officials of the Jean Wang, thus ensuring he would never ascend the throne. I also reminded the empress to prevent the crown prince and Prince Jean from following the same path as the emperor and Prince Qin. The blood of over 300 people from the Prince Qin's mansion had just stained the market square red. The empress covered her chest and remained silent for a long time. A few days later, Prince Jean was sent to his fiefdom by the empress and the emperor, and was forbidden to return to the capital without an imperial decree. The Prince of Jean was completely out of the picture. Before he left, he wanted to see me one last time. Such a meaningless act. which would only arouse my husband's suspicion. I would not do. I refused to meet him. Between us, there was no connection in a previous life, and no fate in this one. Whether it was gratitude or affection, it was all empty, leaving only hatred. If I could, I would never see him again. Whether he regretted it or not was none of my concern. The Crown Prince and the Prince of Jean stood by. In the past, I had only one child with him. He was obsessed with politics and had little interest in beauty. In his spare time, he would always call me and our son to eat together, and he would have our son call him father instead of emperor. Among the old servants from his former residence, there were 2 beauties and a concubine. One died of illness, another became a nun, and the remaining one was granted the title of noble consort and has been assisting me in managing affairs ever since. She has no children and is utterly loyal to me. No new concubines have been brought into the palace since then. The emperor strongly opposes this matter. Every time a court official suggests selecting concubines, he flies into a rage. In the past, emperors would bring a court official's daughter into the palace to be a concubine as a way to win his favor. The emperor would then ask me how to deal with that official. With my experience from 2 lifetimes, every suggestion I made was brilliant. The emperor even asked me to secretly help him review official documents so he could rest for a moment. Being an emperor is difficult, he told me, but being a husband and a father is not difficult at all. My father always said he had no choice. But in truth, he simply did not want to. I want to be a good husband and a good father. I looked at him quietly. In that moment, my heart was utterly at peace. You are an excellent husband and father, and an excellent emperor, I said, lowering my head to kiss him gently. It turned out that I had been reborn not to climb back to power, but to meet him again. In my previous life, I had missed him. A painting of 100 birds paying homage to a phoenix had captivated him, and he had cherished it all his life.